The tie grabbing happened so fast Mary didn't even have time to scream. 1 second, she was plating the final course for Hyun Woo's private dinner. The next, she heard that sound. That devastating, beautiful sound that every mother knows. The triumphant giggle of a baby who's just escaped containment. Mary's head snapped up. Her heart stopped. Leo was crawling down the hallway, heading straight for the dining hall, heading straight for him. No, no, no! Mary dropped the plate. It shattered, but she didn't care. She was already running, her chef's whites billowing behind her, her toque falling off as she sprinted toward her son. But she was too late. The dining hall doors opened, and Hyun Woo stepped into the hallway. 6 feet of controlled violence in a perfectly tailored black suit, his slicked-back hair catching the light from the crystal chandelier overhead. The jagged scar on his left cheekbone looked even more prominent in the golden glow, a reminder of the brutal world he commanded. He was looking down at some papers in his hand, barely paying attention to where he was walking. And Leo, her fearless, curious, completely oblivious 10-month-old son, crawled directly into his path and grabbed the black silk tie hanging from Hyun Woo's suit. The entire mansion seemed to hold its breath. Mary skidded to a stop 15 feet away, her hand flying to her mouth to trap the sob threatening to escape. Every guard in the hallway had their hands on their weapons, frozen in place, waiting for their boss's signal. Hyun Woo stopped walking. He looked down. Leo looked up, giggled, and pulled. The most feared man in Seoul's underground bent forward slightly from the force of the tiny fist wrapped around his tie. His papers slipped from his hands, scattering across the marble floor. "Please," Mary whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, he's just a baby. He doesn't know." But her words died as she watched what happened next. Hyun Woo crouched down, slowly, deliberately, until he was at eye level with the baby, who refused to let go of his tie. Leo's face split into the biggest smile Mary had ever seen. Her son, her baby who cried when strangers looked at him too long, who had meltdowns when anyone except Mary tried to hold him, reached out his free hand and touched Hyun Woo's scarred cheek. The silence that followed was deafening. Mary could see the guards' confusion, could feel the tension radiating through the hallway as everyone waited for the explosion, for the violence, for the Monster of Seoul to remind them all why they feared him. But Hyun Woo didn't move. He just stared at Leo with an expression Mary couldn't read. Something between shock and something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. "Who?" Hyun Woo said quietly, his voice like ice over still water. "Does this child belong to?" Every eye in the hallway turned to Mary. "He's mine, sir." The words came out as barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry. The daycare closed this morning. I had nowhere else to take him. I tried to keep him in the pantry, but he got out. I'll leave right now. How old is he?" Mary blinked. Of all the questions she expected, that wasn't one of them. 10 months, sir." Hyun Woo's eyes, dark and merciless, the eyes that had allegedly watched 17 men die without flinching, dropped back to Leo. The baby was still touching his face, tiny fingers tracing the scar on his cheekbone with pure, uncomplicated curiosity. "He's not afraid," Hyun Woo observed. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact that seemed to puzzle him. "No, sir," Mary managed. He's usually terrified of strangers. I don't understand why he's—" Leo chose that moment to lean forward and press his forehead against Hyun Woo's, still gripping that expensive silk tie like it was a lifeline. The baby made a soft cooing sound, the kind he only made when he felt completely safe. Something shifted in Hyun Woo's expression, just for a second, just long enough for Mary to see the mask crack before it slammed back into place. He stood up. Leo whimpered at the loss of contact, tiny hands reaching up, still holding the tie. The fabric pulled taut between them, expensive black silk connecting a 10-month-old baby to Seoul's most dangerous man. "What's your name?" Hyun Woo asked, his eyes still on the child. "Mary, sir. Mary Davis. I'm one of your chefs." "Not anymore." His gaze finally lifted to meet hers, and Mary felt her knees go weak. "As of this moment, you're my personal chef. You and the child will move into the penthouse. Tonight." The hallway erupted in barely suppressed gasps. "Sir, I don't think—" "I don't repeat myself, Miss Davis." Hyun Woo reached down, and Mary watched in absolute horror as he gently pried Leo's fingers from his tie, one tiny fist at a time. But instead of pushing the baby away, he did something that made Mary's world tilt completely sideways. He picked Leo up, just like that, as if he'd done it 1,000 times before. As if holding a baby while running a criminal empire was the most natural thing in the world. Leo didn't cry, didn't squirm, didn't do any of the things he normally did when strangers touched him. Instead, her son laid his head on Hyun Woo's shoulder, his little hand reaching up to touch that scarred face again, and smiled. Hyun Woo looked at Mary over the baby's head. "He'll be safe with me," he said, and there was something in his voice, something fierce and protective, and completely at odds with his reputation. "They both will be." Mary couldn't speak, couldn't process what she was witnessing. Her brain simply refused to accept the image in front of her. The Monster of Seoul holding her baby with a gentleness that contradicted everything she'd heard about him. "Sir," one of the guards finally dared to speak. "Should we—" "Leave us," Hyun Woo commanded, his voice returning to its usual cold authority. "All of you, Miss Davis stays." The hallway cleared in seconds, and Mary stood there, alone with her baby and the man everyone feared, watching as Leo touched Hyun Woo's face like he'd found something precious, something worth protecting, something that looked almost like hope in the eyes of a man who'd forgotten what hope felt like. What do you think Leo sees that everyone else has missed? Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to say hello and hear your theory about what happens next in this story. The interrogation room wasn't what Mary expected. No cold concrete walls, no single hanging light bulb like in the movies. Instead, Hyun Woo's private office was all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. Leo sat in her lap, completely content, playing with the buttons on her chef's jacket. Hyun Woo sat across from them, his hands steepled beneath his chin, his dark eyes fixed on the baby with an intensity that made Mary's skin prickle. "Tell me about his father," Hyun Woo said quietly. Mary's throat tightened. "He's not in the picture." "That's not what I asked." "With all due respect, sir, I don't see how that's relevant to—" "Everything about this child is relevant to me now, Miss Davis." Hyun Woo leaned forward slightly. "He grabbed my tie. He touched my face. He looked at me like—" He paused and something flickered across his expression. "Like he wasn't afraid. Children are always afraid of me." Mary shifted Leo in her arms. "Maybe he just doesn't understand danger yet." "No." Hyun Woo's voice was firm. "It's something else. The way he looked at me, the way he reached for me." His eyes narrowed. "Does he do this with everyone?" "No," Mary admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "He screams when strangers try to hold him. Even my mother can't get near him without him having a complete meltdown. The pediatrician has to examine him while I hold him because he won't let anyone else touch him." Hyun Woo stood abruptly, moving to the window. His reflection in the glass showed a man at war with himself. "Then why me?" "I don't know, sir." He turned back to face her, and Mary saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Vulnerability. "My men are terrified of me. My enemies would rather die than face me. Children cross the street when they see me coming." He touched the scar on his cheek absently. "But your son—" He smiled at me. Leo chose that moment to reach toward Hyun Woo, making grabbing motions with his little hands and babbling insistently. Mary tightened her grip on him. "Leo, no. Let him," Hyun Woo said softly. "Sir, I don't think—" "Please." That single word spoken with such unexpected gentleness made Mary's resistance crumble. Slowly, carefully, she stood and moved closer. Leo immediately lunged forward, and Hyun Woo caught him with surprising ease, settling the baby against his chest like he'd done it 1,000 times. Leo's little hand immediately went to Hyun Woo's face, patting his scarred cheek, and the baby made a soft cooing sound that Mary had never heard before. It was the sound of complete trust. "What does he see?" Hyun Woo whispered, more to himself than to Mary. "What does this child see that everyone else misses? If this moment pulled you in, subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Hyun Woo discovers the truth about Leo's power." Comment below. What do you think the baby sees in him? The penthouse was obscene. Mary stood in the entryway, holding Leo on her hip, staring at the sprawling space that was apparently now their home. Marble floors, designer furniture, art that probably cost more than she'd make in 10 lifetimes. "Your room is down that hall," Hyun Woo said, gesturing to the left. "The nursery is being set up as we speak. You'll have everything you need." "Sir, this isn't necessary. We can stay in the staff quarters." "No." His tone left no room for argument. "You stay here, where I can—" He trailed off, his jaw tightening. "Where can you do what?" He turned to face her fully, and Mary saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. "Where I can make sure you're safe." "Safe from what?" "From everything." He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the intimate space. "Do you know what I do, Miss Davis? Do you truly understand what kind of man I am?" Mary's heart pounded. "I know enough." "Then you know that keeping you in the staff quarters would be like painting a target on your back." His voice dropped lower. "The moment my enemies discover that your son can do what he does, that he can make me feel—" He stopped himself, his hands clenching into fists. "They'll come for him, for you, to use you against me." "But we're nothing to you," Mary protested. "We're just—" "You're everything to me now." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was ready to unpack. Leo squirmed in Mary's arms, reaching for Hyun Woo again. The baby made an insistent noise, and before Mary could stop him, Leo had launched himself forward. Hyun Woo caught him automatically, and the baby immediately settled against his shoulder with a contented sigh. Mary watched helpless as the most feared man in Seoul stood in his penthouse, holding her son like the child was made of glass. Hyun Woo's hand came up to support Leo's back, and his expression softened in a way that made Mary's chest ache. "He trusts you," she said quietly. "I don't deserve his trust." "Maybe that's exactly why he gives it." Hyun Woo's eyes snapped to hers, and for a moment, Mary saw past the monster everyone feared. She saw a man who'd been alone for so long, he'd forgotten what warmth felt like. A man who'd convinced himself he was beyond redemption until a 10-month-old baby looked at him and saw something worth saving. "The nursery will be ready in an hour," Hyun Woo said, his voice rough. "Until then, he can stay with me." "Sir." "I won't hurt him, Miss Davis. I would die before I let anything happen to this child." He looked down at Leo, who had fallen asleep against his shoulder, a tiny fist curled in the fabric of his expensive suit. "I would burn this entire city to the ground to keep him safe." And Mary believed him. The boardroom was filled with men who'd built empires on blood and fear. Hyun Woo sat at the head of the table, his expression carved from ice, his scar more prominent under the harsh fluorescent lights. And in his arms, sleeping peacefully, was Leo. Mary stood in the corner, her heart in her throat, watching as Seoul's most dangerous criminals tried very hard not to stare at the baby their boss was cradling like it was the most natural thing in the world. "The Kim Syndicate is moving into our territory," one of the men was saying, his eyes darting nervously between Hyun Woo and the child. "They hit 3 of our warehouses last week. We need to respond with—" "You need to do nothing," Hyun Woo interrupted, his voice soft but lethal. His hand moved in slow, gentle circles on Leo's back. "I'll handle the Kim Syndicate myself." "Boss, with all respect, maybe now isn't the time to—" "To what?" Hyun Woo's eyes lifted, and the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. "Speak carefully." The man swallowed hard. "To show weakness." Leo stirred in Hyun Woo's arms, making a small, whimpering sound. Instantly, Hyun Woo's entire demeanor shifted. The ice melted. His expression softened. He adjusted his hold, bringing the baby closer to his chest, and murmured something in Korean that Mary couldn't quite catch. The baby settled immediately, his little hand reaching up to touch Hyun Woo's scarred cheek before drifting back to sleep. Every man in that room watched the exchange with barely concealed shock. "This," Hyun Woo said quietly, gesturing to Leo with his free hand, "is not weakness. This is what I'm willing to kill for now. This is what I'm willing to die for." His eyes swept across the table, and Mary saw several men flinch. "The Kim Syndicate wants a war? They can have one, but they will learn very quickly that a man with nothing to lose is dangerous. A man with everything to lose is unstoppable." He stood, still holding Leo with practiced ease. "The meeting was adjourned. I want surveillance on all Kim Syndicate movements. I want to know every breath they take, every step they make, and I want options on my desk by morning." The men scrambled to leave, but Hyun Woo's voice stopped them at the door. "One more thing." His tone was deceptively soft. "If any of you even think about using this child or his mother as leverage against me, I will make what I did to the Choi family look like mercy. Am I understood?" A chorus of "Yes, boss" echoed through the room. When they were alone, Mary finally found her voice. "You can't bring a baby to a business meeting." Hyun Woo looked down at Leo, still sleeping peacefully in his arms. "Why not? He's the only one here who doesn't lie to me." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point, Miss Davis?" He moved closer, and Mary's breath caught. "Should I pretend he doesn't exist? Should I hide him away like a dirty secret? Should I go back to being the man I was before he grabbed my tie and looked at me like I was worth something?" "I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying?" Mary gestured helplessly at the sleeping baby. "I'm saying that this, whatever this is, it's not sustainable. You're a mafia boss. He's a child. Eventually, those two worlds are going to collide, and someone's going to get hurt." "Yes," Hyun Woo agreed quietly. "They will, and I will make sure it's not him. If you feel the tension building, stay close. Subscribe for free so you don't miss the moment everything changes. Comment what you think happens when Hyun Woo's enemies discover his weakness." The wound wasn't deep, but it was bleeding enough to make Mary's hands shake as she pressed gauze against Hyun Woo's side. He'd come home an hour ago, his shirt torn and bloodied, his expression darker than she'd ever seen it. Leo was asleep in the nursery, completely oblivious to the violence that had followed his new protector home. "You need a hospital," Mary said, her voice tight. "I need you to stop fussing and let me handle this. You're bleeding all over your $1,000 suit. I have others." Mary pressed harder, and Hyun Woo hissed in pain. "What happened?" "Nothing that concerns you. You came home covered in blood. That concerns me." His eyes met hers, and Mary saw exhaustion there. Not physical. This was the bone-deep weariness of a man who'd been fighting for so long, he'd forgotten what peace felt like. "The Kim Syndicate sent a message," he said finally. "I sent one back. Is it over?" "No." His hand covered hers, stilling her movements. "It's just beginning." Mary pulled her hand away, reaching for fresh bandages. "You should have left us in the staff quarters. We're putting you in danger." "You think I care about danger?" Hyun Woo caught her wrist, his grip gentle but firm. "I've lived with danger my entire life, Miss Davis. Danger is familiar. Danger is predictable." His thumb traced the pulse point on her wrist. "This, what I feel when I look at your son, this terrifies me more than any bullet ever could." "Why?" "Because for the first time in 20 years, I have something to lose." The silence stretched between them, heavy with words neither of them was brave enough to speak. Finally, Mary pulled her wrist free and resumed bandaging his wound. "Tell me about the scar," she said softly. "On your face." Hyun Woo's jaw tightened. "That's not a pleasant story." "I didn't ask if it was pleasant. I asked you to tell me." For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then so quietly she almost missed it, he began to speak. "I had a sister. Younger. 7 years old." His hand moved to his scarred cheek, fingers tracing the jagged line. "She was everything good I wasn't. Sweet, innocent. She saw the world the way your son does, full of possibility instead of danger." Mary's hand stilled. "Our father was in debt to the wrong people. They came for payment. When he couldn't give them what they wanted, they took her instead." His voice was completely emotionless now, detached. "I was 15. I tried to stop them. One of them had a knife. He gave me this," he touched his scar, "and told me to remember what happened to boys who got in the way." "Hyun Woo!" "They killed her," he continued, as if Mary hadn't spoken. "I sent pieces of her back to my father as a warning. I swore that day that I would become the thing everyone feared, that I would be the monster, so no one would ever take anything from me again." Mary's heart shattered. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be." He finally looked at her, and his eyes were hollow. "That girl died 20 years ago. I made sure of it. I hunted down every person involved. I made them beg, made them scream, made them understand exactly what they'd taken from me." His smile was terrible. "And when it was over, I realized I'd become exactly what they were. A monster who takes and destroys and leaves nothing but blood in his wake. That's not true, isn't it? He gestured to his bandaged side. Look at me, Miss Davis. Look at what I do. Look at the life I lead. I'm looking at a man who holds my son like he's precious, Mary said firmly. I'm looking at a man who brought us into his home to keep us safe. I'm looking at a man who sits in boardrooms with a baby in his arms and dares anyone to call it weakness. That's not redemption. That's selfishness. Hyun Woo stood, wincing slightly. I keep you close because your son makes me feel human again. Because when he touches my face, I can almost forget the things I've done. That's not noble, Miss Davis. That's just another way of talking. What if he wants to give it? Hyun Woo stared at her. He's a baby. He doesn't understand what he's giving me. Maybe he understands better than any of us. Mary moved closer, her voice soft but steady. My son has never been wrong about people. Never. He screams at anyone with bad intentions. He cried for 3 hours straight when my ex-boyfriend came to visit. He wouldn't even look at the neighbor who seemed nice but turned out to be stealing from the building. What are you saying? I'm saying that Leo sees something in you that you've spent 20 years trying to bury. Mary reached up, and before she could stop herself, her fingers brushed the scar on his cheek. He sees your sister, the boy who tried to protect her, the person you were before the world made you into this. Hyun Woo's hand came up to catch hers, pressing her palm against his scarred face. His eyes closed, and Mary saw his throat work as he swallowed hard. I don't know how to be that person anymore, he whispered. Then let Leo teach you. When his eyes opened, they were wet. Mary had never seen him cry, wasn't sure anyone had in the last 2 decades. But there, in the dim light of his penthouse, the Monster of Seoul let a single tear slip down his scarred cheek. If this scene hits you, pause with me. Like the video if you felt it. Subscribe to keep following them. Comment whose heart broke more, his or yours. Mary woke to the sound of soft Korean being spoken in the darkness. For a moment she was disoriented, forgetting where she was. Then reality crashed back. The penthouse, Hyun Woo, everything that had happened in the last 3 days. She slipped out of bed and padded quietly down the hall, following the voice to the nursery. The sight that greeted her made her breath catch. Hyun Woo sat in the rocking chair by the window, Leo cradled in his arms, the city lights casting them both in a soft glow. He was speaking to the baby in Korean, his voice gentle, his scarred face softer than Mary had ever seen it. Leo was awake, his wide eyes fixed on Hyun Woo's face, his little hand resting against the man's chest. And as Mary watched, her son did something he'd never done before. He spoke. Not a real word, just a sound. But it was deliberate, intentional, and it sounded almost like he was trying to echo whatever Hyun Woo had just said. Hyun Woo went completely still. His eyes widened, and his hand trembled slightly as it came up to touch Leo's cheek. Say it again, he whispered in English. Please, little one, say it again. Leo made the sound again, and this time Mary recognized it. It was the Korean word for safe. Hyun Woo's face crumpled. He pulled Leo closer, burying his face in the baby's soft curls, and his shoulders shook with silent sobs. Mary watched, her own tears streaming down her face, as the most feared man in Seoul broke apart in the arms of a 10-month-old child who'd somehow seen past 20 years of violence and blood to the broken boy underneath. I'll keep you safe, Hyun Woo promised, his voice raw and wrecked. Both of you, I swear it. In my sister's memory, I swear it. Leo patted his face, the gesture so gentle and trusting that Mary had to press her hand to her mouth to stifle her sob. And somewhere in the darkness of Seoul, the Kim Syndicate was planning their next move, unaware that they'd just declared war on a man who'd finally found something worth protecting. A man who'd spent 20 years becoming a monster, only to discover that monsters could still remember how to be human. If the baby's first word destroys you, you're not alone. Like the video. Subscribe for free because what comes next will change everything. Comment what you think Hyun Woo is willing to do to protect them. The file landed on Hyun Woo's desk with a heavy thud. His security chief, Min Jun, stood across from him, his expression carefully neutral. What is this? Hyun Woo asked, not looking up from the contract he was reviewing. Leo was asleep in the portable crib he'd had installed in his office, and Mary was in the kitchen preparing lunch. Background check on Miss Davis. You asked for it 3 days ago. Hyun Woo had asked for it, standard procedure for anyone living in his home. But as he opened the file and began reading, something cold settled in his chest. Mary Davis, age 27. I am a former culinary school student. No criminal record. One previous relationship. His eyes caught on the name, and everything inside him went still. Marcus Chen. The room tilted. Hyun Woo's hands tightened on the file until the paper crumpled. Sir? Min Jun's voice sounded far away. Marcus Chen, the man who'd worked as his accountant 5 years ago. The man who'd embezzled $2 million from his operations. The man who'd tried to run when Hyun Woo discovered the theft. The man Hyun Woo had personally exiled to Hong Kong after breaking both his legs and ensuring he'd never work in Seoul again. When did they date? Hyun Woo's voice was hollow. According to the file, they were together for 8 months, ended approximately 11 months ago. Min Jun paused. Right around the time Miss Davis would have become pregnant. The math crashed into Hyun Woo like a physical blow. 11 months ago, Leo was 10 months old. Get out, Hyun Woo said quietly. Sir, get out! Min Jun left immediately. Hyun Woo sat alone in his office, staring at the file, his mind racing through implications he didn't want to face. Marcus Chen had been with Mary, had gotten her pregnant, had abandoned her right before Leo was born, and Hyun Woo had been the one to destroy him. The irony was almost poetic. The man who'd broken Mary's heart, who'd left her to raise a child alone, who'd abandoned his own son, Hyun Woo had made him pay for his crimes. Not knowing, never knowing. Cosmic justice, some might call it, but all Hyun Woo felt was sick. He stood and moved to the crib, looking down at Leo's sleeping face. The baby's features were soft, innocent, completely unaware of the complicated web of violence and betrayal that connected the adults in his life. Your father was a coward, Hyun Woo whispered. He stole from me. He ran, and he left you and your mother to fend for yourselves. His hand reached down, gently brushing Leo's soft curls. But you're better off without him. You deserve better than a man who would abandon you. Leo stirred, his eyes blinking open. When he saw Hyun Woo, his face split into that devastating smile, and his little arms reached up. Hyun Woo lifted him carefully, and Leo immediately snuggled against his chest, his tiny hand reaching for the scar on Hyun Woo's cheek. I'm not your father, Hyun Woo said, his voice breaking, but I swear to you, I will be better than he ever could have been. I will protect you. I will keep you safe. I will never leave you. Leo patted his face and made a soft, cooing sound that shattered what was left of Hyun Woo's defenses. The door opened, and Mary walked in carrying a tray. She froze when she saw the file on his desk, her face going pale. You know, she said quietly. When were you going to tell me? Tell you what? That my ex-boyfriend was a criminal? That he stole from you? That he, her voice cracked, that he disappeared right before Leo was born and I never saw him again? Did you know what he did? Not until after. Mary set the tray down with shaking hands. He told me he worked in finance. I didn't know he was stealing. Didn't know he was connected to you. By the time I found out, he was already gone. Hyun Woo watched her carefully. And you never tried to find him? Why would I? Bitterness crept into her voice. He made it clear he didn't want us. He left me alone and pregnant with a son he would never meet. So no, I didn't try to find him. I moved on. I survived. I built a life for Leo without him. I destroyed him, Hyun Woo said flatly. I broke his legs, ruined his reputation. I made sure he could never come back to Seoul. Mary's eyes met his and she didn't flinch. Good. The word hung between them. Good? Hyun Woo repeated. He stole from you. He betrayed you. He deserved what he got. Mary moved closer, her voice steady. And he abandoned his son. If you hadn't dealt with him, I would have found a way to make him pay myself. Something shifted in Hyun Woo's chest. He'd expected horror, disgust, fear. Instead, Mary was looking at him with fierce approval. You don't understand what I did to him. I don't need to. She reached out, her hand covering his where it rested on Leo's back. Whatever you did, it was justice. And maybe it was fate. Maybe you were protecting us even before you knew we existed. Hyun Woo stared at her. This woman who'd walked into his life by accident and turned everything upside down. This woman who looked at his violence and saw protection instead of monstrosity. He doesn't deserve to be Leo's father, Hyun Woo said quietly. No, Mary agreed. He doesn't. But I'm no better. I'm a criminal, a killer. I've done things that would make you run screaming if you knew the full truth. Mary's hand moved to his scarred cheek, mirroring Leo's gesture. You're the man who holds my son like he's precious, who cries when he says his first word, who sits in business meetings with a baby in his arms and dares anyone to call it weakness. Her eyes were fierce. You're not his biological father, Hyun Woo, but you're already more of a father to him than Marcus Chen ever could have been. If this revelation shook you, stay with us. Subscribe so you don't miss the moment Hyun Woo makes his choice. Comment below. Do you think he's ready to be a father? The boutique owner looked terrified. Hyun Woo couldn't blame him. It was 2 in the morning, and he'd just had the most feared man in Seoul bang on his door demanding to be let in. I need a crib, Hyun Woo said. The owner blinked. Crib? Yes, the best one you have. And Hyun Woo glanced at the list Mary had written for him. Bottles, toys, clothes, everything a 10-month-old child needs. Sir, it's 2 in the morning. Hyun Woo pulled out his wallet and dropped a stack of bills on the counter. Consider it an inconvenience fee. An hour later, his penthouse looked like a children's store had exploded inside it. The sleek, minimalist space was now filled with colorful toys, soft blankets, and a hand-carved wooden crib that had cost more than most people's cars. Mary stood in the doorway of the nursery, her hand pressed to her mouth, her eyes wet with unshed tears. You didn't have to do this, she whispered. Yes, I did. Hyun Woo was assembling the crib, his expensive suit jacket discarded, his sleeves rolled up. He deserves the best, both of you do. Hyun Woo! His father abandoned him. Hyun Woo's voice was rough as he tightened another bolt. Left him before he was even born. Never bothered to check if he was okay, if he needed anything, if his mother was struggling to provide for him. We were fine. You were working yourself to exhaustion in my kitchen, hiding your son in a pantry because you couldn't afford childcare. Hyun Woo finally looked at her, and his eyes were blazing. That's not fine, Mary. That's survival, and you both deserve better than survival. Mary moved closer, kneeling beside him on the floor. What are you saying? Hyun Woo's hand still on the crib. I'm saying that Marcus Chen doesn't get to be his father. He doesn't get to walk back into your lives someday and claim what he threw away. I won't allow it. You don't have any legal right to... I don't care about legal rights. Hyun Woo turned to face her fully. I care about the fact that Leo reaches for me when he's scared, that he smiles when I walk into a room, that he said his first word while sitting in my arms. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I care about the fact that when I look at him, I see a future I never thought I could have, a chance to be something other than a monster. Mary's tears spilled over. You're not a monster. I am. Hyun Woo's hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing away her tears. But maybe with you and Leo, I can be a monster who protects instead of destroys. Maybe I can be the father he deserves, even if I don't deserve him. You do deserve him, Mary said fiercely. You deserve both of us. The kiss happened before either of them could think better of it. Hyun Woo's lips met Mary's with a desperation that spoke of 20 years of loneliness finally breaking open. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Hyun Woo rested his forehead against hers. I can't promise you a normal life, he said. I can't promise you safety or stability or any of the things you deserve. I don't want normal, Mary whispered. I want you. I want this. I want us to be a family. Family. Hyun Woo tasted the word like something foreign and precious. I haven't had a family since I was 15 years old. Then it's time you had one again. Later, after the crib was assembled and Mary had gone to bed, Hyun Woo stood in the nursery watching Leo sleep. The baby was curled on his side, his thumb in his mouth, completely at peace. I don't know how to be a father, Hyun Woo whispered into the darkness. I don't know how to be the man you need me to be. But I'll learn. I'll try. For you, little one, I'll try to be better than I am. Leo stirred, his eyes opening slightly. When he saw Hyun Woo, he smiled. That devastating, trusting smile that had changed everything. And his little hand reached out. Hyun Woo took it, feeling the tiny fingers wrap around his much larger one. And something inside him that had been broken for 20 years started to heal. The call came at 4 in the morning. Hyun Woo was instantly awake, his hand reaching for the phone on his nightstand. They have her. Minjun's voice was tight with panic. The Kim Syndicate. They took Miss Davis from the market. They're demanding you surrender your territory in exchange for her life. Hyun Woo was out of bed before Minjun finished speaking. Where? The warehouse on Pier 9. Boss, they're expecting you to bring back up. This is a trap. I don't care. Hyun Woo was already pulling on his suit, his movements precise and controlled, even as rage flooded his system. Get Leo to the safe house. Keep him there until I return. And if you don't return, then you make sure he's taken care of. Set up a trust. Give Mary's mother guardianship. Make sure he has everything he needs. Hyun Woo's voice was ice. But I will return, because those idiots just made the biggest mistake of their lives. He hung up and moved to the nursery. Leo was still asleep, unaware that his mother was in danger. Unaware that the man he trusted was about to walk into hell to get her back. Hyun Woo leaned down, pressing a kiss to Leo's forehead. I'll bring your mother home, he promised, and then I'll make sure no one ever threatens our family again. Before we continue, quick question. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and subscribe for free, because what happens next will change everything forever. The warehouse was exactly what Hyun Woo expected. Dark, isolated, filled with the Kim Syndicate's men. Mary was tied to a chair in the center, her face bruised but her eyes defiant. When she saw him walk in alone, her expression shifted to horror. No, Hyun Woo, it's a trap. Run! I know it's a trap. Hyun Woo's voice echoed through the warehouse as he approached. I'm counting on it. The Kim Syndicate's leader stepped out of the shadows, his smile cruel. The Monster of Seoul, walking into his own execution. How disappointing. I expected more of a fight. Oh, you'll get into a fight. Hyun Woo stopped 10 feet from Mary. But first, let me explain something. You took the mother of my child. You threatened my family. You think I'd come here unprepared? You're alone. Am I? Hyun Woo smiled, and it was terrible. Look up. The Kim Syndicate members looked up just as red laser sights painted targets across their chests. Snipers, positioned on every rooftop surrounding the warehouse. I told my men to stay back, Hyun Woo continued conversationally, but I never said they had to stay home. You see, the thing about being a monster is that people forget monsters can be strategic. They forget that monsters can plan. They forget that a man with everything to lose will do absolutely anything to protect it. He pulled a gun from his jacket, the movement fluid and practiced. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to untie her, you're going to let her walk out of here, and then you and I are going to have a conversation about what happens to people who threaten my family. You're bluffing. You wouldn't risk her life. Hyun Woo shot him in the kneecap. The man went down screaming, and chaos erupted. But Hyun Woo had planned for chaos. I had trained for it, had spent 20 years becoming the thing everyone feared, and now he used every ounce of that skill to protect the only thing that mattered. He moved through the warehouse like death incarnate, each shot precise, each movement calculated. The snipers picked off anyone who tried to escape. Within minutes, the Kim Syndicate's men were either dead or dying, and Hyun Woo was cutting Mary free from her restraints. Leo, she gasped. Safe, at the safe house with Min Jun. Hyun Woo pulled her against him, checking her for injuries. Are you hurt? Did they? I'm fine. She was shaking but alive. You came for me. Always. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I will always come for you. Both of you. You're my family now. Don't walk away now. This is where everything changes. If you're still here, you're part of this story. Subscribe to see how it ends. The gunshot came from nowhere. Hyun Woo felt the impact, felt his body twist, and felt himself falling. But even as he went down, his only thought was of Mary behind him. He'd put himself between her and the shooter. Of course he had. That's what fathers did. That's what men who'd found redemption did. They protected their families. Hyun Woo! Mary's scream echoed through the warehouse as she caught him, her hands pressing against the wound in his chest. No, 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 stay with me, please. Leo, Hyun Woo managed, blood bubbling at his lips. Tell him I tried. Tell him I wanted to be better. Tell him, you're going to tell him yourself. Mary was sobbing now, her hands slick with his blood. You're going to live. You're going to come home. You're going to be his father, do you hear me? You don't get to leave us now. Hyun Woo's hand found hers, squeezing weakly. The best thing I ever did was let him grab my tie. The world was going dark, but in that darkness, Hyun Woo saw light, saw a future where Leo grew up safe and loved, saw Mary smiling without fear, saw himself, somehow, impossibly, being the father a broken boy and an abandoned mother deserved. I love you, he whispered, both of you, my family. Then the darkness took him. Hyun Woo woke to the sound of a baby babbling. For a moment he thought he was dead, and this was heaven, a place where innocent sounds replaced the screams and gunfire that usually haunted his dreams. Then pain crashed through his chest, and he knew he was very much alive. You're awake. Mary's voice was thick with tears. She was sitting beside his hospital bed, Leo in her arms, both of them looking at him like he'd risen from the dead. Maybe he had. How long? Hyun Woo's voice was rough. 3 days. The bullet missed your heart by centimeters. The doctors said it was a miracle. Mary's hand found his, gripping tight. Leo hasn't stopped crying. He knew something was wrong. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, just kept crying and reaching for the door like he was waiting for you to come back. Leo heard his voice and immediately started squirming in Mary's arms, reaching for Hyun Woo with desperate little hands. Careful, Mary warned as she carefully placed Leo on the bed beside him. Your stitches. But Leo was already crawling up Hyun Woo's body, his little hands patting Hyun Woo's face, his eyes wide and wet. The baby made a distressed sound, and Hyun Woo realized Leo was checking him for injuries, trying to understand why the man he trusted wasn't picking him up like usual. I'm okay, little one, Hyun Woo whispered, using his good arm to pull Leo against his side. I'm here. I came back. I'll always come back to you. Leo buried his face in Hyun Woo's neck and made a sound that was half sob, half sigh of relief. His tiny hand found Hyun Woo's scarred cheek and held on like he was afraid to let go. He thought he lost you, Mary said softly. We both did. I'm sorry. Hyun Woo looked at her. This woman who'd accidentally walked into his life and given him everything he'd spent 20 years believing he didn't deserve. I should have been more careful. I should have. You saved my life. Mary climbed onto the bed, carefully positioning herself on his other side. You put yourself between me and that bullet. You were willing to die for us. I would do it again. Hyun Woo's voice was fierce despite his weakness. 1,000 times over. You're my family. That means something to me. It means everything. Then promise me something. Mary's hand covered his heart, feeling it beat strong and steady beneath her palm. Promise me you'll build a life worth living for. Promise me you'll find a way to step back from the violence. Promise me Leo won't grow up watching you risk your life every day. Hyun Woo closed his eyes, thinking of the warehouse, the blood, the 20 years he'd spent becoming a monster. Then he thought of Leo's smile, of his first word being safe, of the way Mary looked at him like he was worth saving. I promise, he said. I'll find another way. I'll build something legitimate. I'll step back from the operations and let my lieutenants handle the territories. He opened his eyes, meeting her gaze. I'll be the father he deserves, the husband you deserve. Husband, Mary's breath caught. When I was lying in that warehouse, bleeding out, all I could think was that I'd never get to marry you, never get to make it official, never get to stand in front of people and claim you as mine. His hand came up to cup her face. Marry me, Mary Davis. Let me be Leo's father, legally, officially. Let me spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the family you've given me. Mary was crying again, but this time she was smiling. Yes, yes, you ridiculous, terrifying, wonderful man. Yes. Leo chose that moment to make an approving sound, patting both their faces like he was blessing the union. And somehow, impossibly, Hyun Woo laughed. A real laugh, free and unburdened for the first time in 20 years. Like the video if the ending surprised you. Comment your reaction or your theory about what happens next. Subscribe for free so you don't miss the epilogue. 6 months later, Hyun Woo stood in the office of his new legitimate business, a chain of high-end restaurants that had already become the talk of Seoul. Mary was his head chef, naturally, and Leo had his own playpen in Hyun Woo's office, where he spent his days watching his father work. The transition hadn't been easy. Stepping back from his criminal empire had meant restructuring everything, delegating power, making enemies of some former allies. But Hyun Woo had been strategic, ruthless when necessary, and protective of what mattered most, his family. "Dada!" Leo's voice rang out from the playpen, clear and perfect. Hyun Woo's head snapped up. It was the first time Leo had called him that. Really called him that. Not just babbling, but deliberately, intentionally claiming him as father. He crossed the office in 3 strides, lifting Leo into his arms. The baby was bigger now, 14 months old and walking, his vocabulary expanding every day. "Say it again," Hyun Woo whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "Dada!" Leo patted his scarred cheek, grinning. "My Dada!" Mary appeared in the doorway, her hand on her slightly rounded belly. 3 months pregnant with a baby who would grow up knowing only safety and love, never the violence that had defined Hyun Woo's past. "He's been practicing," she said, smiling. "Wanted to surprise you." Hyun Woo pulled her close with his free arm, holding his entire world in that embrace. "I don't deserve this," he said, like he'd said 100 times before. "No," Mary agreed, like she always did. "But you're going to spend the rest of your life earning it anyway." Leo reached for her belly, patting it gently like he understood there was a baby growing there. Like he was already preparing to be a big brother to the sibling who would never know their father as the Monster of Seoul. They would know him only as Dad, as the man who read bedtime stories and bandaged scraped knees and showed up to school plays, as the man who'd walked away from an empire of violence because a 10-month-old baby grabbed his tie and saw something in him worth saving. "Thank you," Hyun Woo whispered, not sure if he was talking to Mary, to Leo, or to whatever cosmic force had brought them all together. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." Outside, Seoul glittered in the evening light. Somewhere in the city, the remnants of Hyun Woo's former empire continued operating. Somewhere, people still whispered about the Monster of Seoul and wondered where he'd gone. But here in this office, holding his son and his wife, Hyun Woo had found something better than fear. He'd found redemption. And for a man who'd spent 20 years believing he was beyond saving, that was worth more than any empire ever could be. Like the video if this ending satisfied you, or comment if you wanted more. Subscribe for free so you don't miss the next story. And here's a question for you. Do you think Marcus Chen will ever try to come back for Leo? What would Hyun Woo do if he did? Drop your theories below. The wildest one might inspire my next story.